Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's midday weather outlook for the southern region brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I want to begin first with a picture that was taken by Jim Wood and posted to Twitter by Tim Buckley. A fantastic view here of what we call a microburst. So over the past several days, much of the southeast has seen some very hit or miss showers and thunderstorms, and some of them were quite loaded with precipitation. In the downdraft, that is the part of the storm that is like this precipitation-loaded descending pocket of air. And that's kind of the definition of it. The downdraft of this particular thunderstorm had a very interesting shape that I want to share with you here, because we would actually call this downdraft, which I'm tracing the outer edge of it here, a microburst. Can you actually see how the bottom of the downdraft is kind of bending off in this direction? That's because as this air was descending, it was hitting the ground and is forcing to be spread sideways. And what that tells us is that the descending pocket of air that we had inside the storm must have been descending very quickly. It may have produced some local damage in and around Charlotte, North Carolina. Well, several of our thunderstorms took on this shape a couple of days ago here in the middle of the week. But as we got toward the end of the week, we'll take a look at this. This is just looking at the last 24 hours of precipitation, and much of North Carolina, South Carolina, and that part of the southeast was dry. We have continued to watch a flow pattern that looks something like this. Storms being born right into this particular corridor of Kansas and Oklahoma, and then continuing to press toward the southeast, even though they slightly broke up as they got down toward parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Still, they persisted through that area. And all around this, some beautiful, very photogenic storms, but very, very heavy rainfall amounts coming out of them at times. Well, some big questions we need to be talking about here is when will we be bringing rain back into Texas? If we'll be bringing rain back into Texas. Does this corridor continue to stay very active? Is anything coming out of the tropics? And are we going to be getting more precipitation over here toward the Gulf Coast, the East Coast, as well as the Gulf Coast? Because when we look at our most recent drought monitor, we can see that over here along coastal Carolinas, we are still very dry. Also getting down here into parts of the Gulf Coast. We're talking, this is some very productive cotton fields down here in this particular part of Alabama and Georgia, and also down here in Texas. In fact, spreading north in Texas, as we've talked about all week long, this particular area has been very, very dry, and it has been missed by these storms that keep running over its perimeter. So let's talk about that, try to figure out where this is going. Certainly in the day on Friday here, the upper level ridge is firmly in place over Texas. So we're going to keep seeing this wash, rinse, repeat pattern here of the flow. In fact, you'll be able to see in a little bit that most of the thunderstorm activity I'm going to show you here is going to follow that trajectory. Bigger feature to be watching, we'll talk about where this goes in a few minutes, is this upper level trough that's sneaking in to parts of the western United States. It's actually fairly deep for this time of year, but our questions come back to what are we expecting to get in terms of rainfall. So I'm going to start you off with a high resolution NAM model. This one runs out 60 hours. We're starting it really early in the morning on Friday, about 6 a.m. As I click play, we do notice that throughout the day, we're watching widely scattered storms pressing through parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, over to parts of Mississippi and Tennessee. That's where our first round is going to be. As we get through the afternoon into the evening hours, widely scattered storms move through parts of Mississippi and Alabama as the next round from the monsoon starts to kick up here. So maybe some rain for the panhandle of Texas, which would be welcomed rain. Also the panhandle of Oklahoma. We're now into the evening hours on Friday, into the early morning hours on Saturday. And what are we going to see once Saturday arrives? Watch the same area right in through here, still seeing widely scattered showers and storms throughout the day, but continuing to press over into Alabama into the afternoon, evening hours, as well as this section of Florida and Georgia. You then see the next surge of that monsoonal moisture coming up in through parts of New Mexico and Colorado. And then you see watch this again. Here we are on Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, and another round of storms is still right in the periphery of that ridge. So if you're in Texas, we've got dry days coming up here. Also parts of the Carolina coast, it's still going to be dry. Maybe a better way to look at this is just to put together the total accumulated precipitation from the European model over the next 5 days. And we just continue to see this region right in through here having our best chance at rainfall. And again, a lot of what you saw here coming in the near term. We do see drier conditions over here in the Carolinas and still remaining dry here in parts of Texas, although we will be getting chances for more hit or miss showers and thunderstorms that could pop on some of the heat. And yes, it's going to be very, very hot in Texas coming up. Let me take those drawings off there because I want to show you the difference between the next 5 days and when you add the subsequent 5 days onto this. So this is days, this takes us out to next Wednesday morning, and now I'm going to add to this all the way out to the following Monday. And we can see here as I click back and forth that overall the pattern stays relatively dry for Texas on the whole, okay? But where we see large increases in rainfall, and we'll call this kind of the beginning half of week 2, is really right down into this corridor, and we need to investigate why that's happening. So to do that, I'm going to take us over to the European model, the operational European model here. We're going to click play and pause it right here at the beginning. We've seen through Sunday, so we've already watched the rounds of storms coming over the top of that ridge down here toward Mississippi, Alabama. And as we continue to progress through the weekend, I think much of the weekend will be dry over here along the southeast, and it'll also be dry here in parts of Texas. So the question is, when does that rain come in? So now we got ourselves out here to Monday, Tuesday, right there, and then getting out into Wednesday. Now, there is the chance as we get toward Wednesday of seeing more widely scattered, Tuesday evening, seeing more widely scattered showers and storms here. There's a low pressure center that's trying to move through parts of the Great Lakes states toward the northeast. It's not well defined here, but there will be a lingering boundary that runs through parts of the Ohio River Valley and then down into parts of the southeast down here in Alabama, Georgia, and Mississippi. Now watch as we get out past Wednesday into next week. This is Wednesday afternoon. Now, this might be something interesting to watch. High pressure builds in behind that low that just swept out of the Great Lakes. And again, the frontal boundary sits right in through here. And that's why we started to see the increase of precipitation chances beyond day 5. And now we're getting into middle of next week. So here we go. This is Wednesday afternoon. Now getting into Thursday morning. And what do we see again? The high pressure center sitting here, and the storms kind of fire around its periphery. See that? So that's why we start to see this region showing with wetter than average conditions once we get to the middle and end of next week. Taking out to next Friday, and then next Saturday, so this is August 17th, we still see a lot of the same. See it right in through there? So that might be a region that, deep into next week, middle of next week, we start to see much more active rainfall for this particular corridor. What did you not see in this forecast? You didn't see any hurricane activity coming up. In fact, the tropical Atlantic is still, for the most part, especially through the next 10 days, really shut down. Look at the drier conditions we have in through this corridor through the next 10 days. And that's important to understand because right now, National Hurricane Center isn't watching a thing out there in terms of any concern at this point. Now, of course, these things can change quickly. So let's get through the next 5 days. We'll check in on it again next week so we know what's to expect out of the tropical Atlantic. But at this point, things are relatively shut down. All right, let's now talk about those temperatures as we go ahead and wrap this video up here. We have heat advisories out for much of Texas, getting over to Louisiana, Mississippi, and in fact, they extend all the way over to Georgia. So we're going to watch this corridor multiple times over the coming days, and this is why. Friday high temperatures, triple digits across parts of Texas here, upper 90s stretching all the way through Louisiana, Mississippi, getting back over to the Carolinas. So this is a very hot day, middle to upper 90s across much of the southern region. As I now get you into Saturday, the heat stays on in Texas, a lot of low to mid 90s here in parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley, but then very warm again as you get over to parts of Georgia and into the Carolinas. Watch this. Sunday, same thing. Monday, no relief. Triple digit heat extending all the way to Oklahoma at this point. This is now Tuesday. Wednesday, it's this point where that low starts to move through the Great Lakes toward the northeast, and it's going to leave a front. It's a weak. I mean, you can't even see it here, but that weaker front on which storms are going to fire middle of next week, right? But then we just see that the temperatures just continue to stay warm. I got you all the way out to next Thursday here. We can still see, although we don't see the triple-digit heat, it's still quite warm across this region. To show you last couple maps here, this is just looking at days 5 through 10 from the European model. We do see that the flow pattern of the atmosphere is going to favor something a bit more like this. So as that broader ridge stretches across this area, we certainly see the continuation of the much above average temperatures. And even as we get out here to the 24th of August, we see that much of the southern half and southern 2/3 of the United States is going to be warm. If there's something to be watching that could be disrupting this, it is right here. We have seen these two powerful typhoons that have been moving into parts of the Western Pacific. Our first one here is about to just absolutely soak this region of China, major flooding threat in the near term. And we're going to watch, it's kind of the sister cyclone that's still sitting out here. This particular typhoon, you can see its storm track over here on the right. And my concern is as this system goes up, it will eventually get absorbed into the jet stream flow. And a lot of this week I've been talking about the potential for that to be disruptive for North American weather in the 10 to 20 day time frame. So we're going to watch it very carefully over the weekend, keep a close eye on the analysis of that system and where it is going, and present it to you next week. I hope you have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next week. Thank you.